So about BUX, let's get on with it. BUX stands for Bitcoin UTXO XPub Management Suite. That's where the name BUX comes from. And this is something that we've been developing for, I think, last 9 months now. We started in November, December of last year. Most of the developments have actually been paid by Tonic Power. So this is something that's needed for the backend infrastructure of Tonic Power. Just to give you a little bit of a connection to the talk title that Eckhart shared, which is BUX, the Swiss Army knife for BSV app development, which actually doesn't come from us, from the BUX team. It comes from Jerry Chan in an article that he wrote after having a interview with Luke Satchmo, Wild Satchmo, I think a lot of you know him, and myself. And he wrote this CoinGeek article, and this is what he called it, BUX, the Swiss Army knife for BSV app development. So this does not come from us, it comes from him. But what he did say about BUX was the BUX is the missing link you were looking for. So that's a big statement, but there's a little bit of a disclaimer there. It is the missing link if you're building a Bitcoin application and are struggling to find out how to query for your related transactions, keep track of your balances, and don't want to pay the ever-increasing cost to run a fully validating node that stores everything, or have to rely on a third-party API, which may not be able to serve your growing needs. So that's actually the little quote from Jerry. And this is it's very nice of him to say, and we hope that he's right, that we've actually made something really nice. But before I get into what BUX is, I'd like to tell you a little bit about why we created BUX. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that have this idea of creating some kind of middleware for Bitcoin. There's probably more people than we know of working on something like this. But the initiative to actually get this done at this time came from Tonic Power. So the guys from Tonic Power have built up a big application that does a lot on Bitcoin. But they were still using third-party services. So there were things like UTXO lookups on what's on chain and things like that, and it just wasn't very reliable. I mean, what's on chain is great, but it wasn't reliable enough, because when I came, for instance, the Tonic Power campaign is very popular and has a lot of hits. There's a lot of UTXOs generated, and sometimes over 10,000, and then what's on chain just can't handle it. Tonic Power is a platform built on Bitcoin to connect advertisers to promoters. So a lot of the things that you will find on Twitter, when, for instance, CoinGeek articles are being shared, there's a short URL, tpow.app, and that's a short URL to the Tonic Power to the CoinGeek article. But the person sharing that is actually getting paid for that. So he is a promoter for Tonic Power and getting paid for sharing those links and actually bringing people into the website. So it's like influencer marketing. The difference to a lot of other influencer marketing that's happening is this is all happening very transparently on the blockchain. So any interaction, any click, any conversion, anything that happens goes on chain immediately. So this is why Tonic Power also generates a lot of transactions. So anytime you would click on one of those TPOW app links and you go to CoinGeek, there will be one or two transactions actually generated on chain to show that. The reason for that is multiple. People might be being paid immediately. So if you are a promoter with a certain level of trustedness, you will get paid immediately. And that transaction will just go into your wallet. Otherwise, it will go into an intermediate wallet that needs to get changed. Needs to get withdrawn from. But also there's a record of that happening at that time. So if you're promoting something for an advertiser and you're not doing very well, you can't all of a sudden come up with 100,000 clicks in an hour, because you can't fake that on chain. So that's creating transparency in the whole advertisement market. So what Tonic Power is doing is, for every interaction that's happening on Tonic Power, is generating transactions. So there's a need for solid wallet infrastructure there. And one of the things that they do is, because not everybody gets paid immediately, some of those payments actually go into an internal wallet, and those wallets are maintained by Tonic Power. So those keys for those wallets are encrypted on the servers of Tonic Power. So it's like custodial keys. And a lot of us that have built applications using something like Handcash or Moneybutton or RelayX as wallets, and they're fantastic. They're great wallets, but you can't do custodial key support there because they have the keys. So you can't bring your own keys and your own addresses and stuff like that. So that's why we're using what's on chain to do that, but that just wasn't reliable enough. Another thing is that we want to do non-standard transactions. So as great as these things are, I've myself built a couple of applications using Handcash, which is fantastic. I can't do non-standard transactions with them. So if I want to do some kind of tokens or anything like that, a STAS token, or they're adding support now, but it's difficult to do things that they haven't added support for. And that's also not their goal. So there's this missing thing in the ecosystem, because we all know that scaling is what we're trying to do, and having your own node, syncing everything, and using that, that's not going to be feasible. So we need something in between. And so what we envisioned is something that is like has a local high throughput. So we have something in between we can talk to, and that talks to the blockchain. So later on chain. So it's basically, if I show you a little bit of a graph, what BUX actually is. BUX is actually this thing that sits in between a wallet and the Bitcoin network. So BUX itself is not a wallet. That's very important. It's part of a complete wallet, but it's actually like an SPV wallet backend. So it's a simplified payment verification wallet. So all the interactions that you have on the blockchain, they will be stored in a database on the BUX server, and you can and so actually the UTXOs that you have and the transactions, they will be in the BUX server, so you don't have to go to the full node. So you have like a little slice of the Bitcoin network that you are interested in on your own little server. Of course, there are things that already do this, like a mobile SPV wallet will do the same thing. And this is actually something that we'd probably create with BUX as well. So it's just taking the wallet apart, making sure that you have your Bitcoin. So if you have your front-end wallet, we'll just be doing key management. That will be talking to the BUX, and BUX will be going back to the Bitcoin network. So it's kind of like a cache for all the transactions in the UTXOs that you are interested in on the blockchain. But a very important design decision that we make very early on is BUX is not itself custodial. BUX does not know anything about your private keys. BUX operates, does everything on XPubs. That's what it calls XPub state management. So we don't have any keys. We don't have any idea of keys or anything like that. It's just like a cache for your blockchain. So what kind of features does BUX have? Well, one of the most important ones for something like an application in Tonic Power is fast transaction creation. So we have a way of doing that. We have the wallet, the key management. So that like the front end of the wallet is built into Tonic Power. And BUX assists with creating transactions that are valid, that use the correct inputs, create the correct outputs, and actually have the correct fee, all that kind of stuff, and goes onto the chain. But it does that very fast, because you don't have to talk to server. You're talking to a server that's very close to your location in your own data center. So there's reduced network communication. So it's very close. Like I said, there's UTXO management, address rotation. There's no reuse. So we were very careful to listen to a lot of the stuff that Craig has been talking about. BUX does not reuse addresses. So every time that you want to do something, we'll create a new address. And it has the concept of, I think it's BIP 32 and BIP 42, 40, I'm kidding, 44, BIP 32, BIP 44. It has an internal and external chain internally. So it's keeping track of all that stuff. So you don't have to. So the only thing that you have to do is you bring your XPriv, so your private key. It is also full paymail support. So there's full paymail built into BUX. You have to configure that. You have to configure some stuff in your DNS, but then it will just work, and we'll do P2P transactions between other wallets like Handcash and Moneybutton, and we'll be able to send and receive on PayMail. But one of the things that we also have in there is a legacy Bitcoin address support. So you can actually also send transactions to legacy addresses. We've built everything in to support that, and we don't know how long we'll be able to do that. But that is built in there, and I'll talk a little bit about how that actually works later in the presentation. One of the things that we wanted to do with BUX is also have non-standard transactions, that you can do whatever you want. This is supposed to be the most flexible wallet infrastructure that you can imagine. So whatever you want to do, you will be able to do. But we also want to build in standards. So a lot of the things that are in the ecosystem, like token support. We want to build in all token support, and we're not there yet, but we already have support for STAS, because it's a UTXO type of token. So it fits very well with the BUX model. And there's definitely more to come. We're already talking to the guys at Run, and we're looking at other tokens, and we basically want to have BUX be the Swiss Army knife for Bitcoin, so you can do whatever you want there. There's also like real-time notifications built in, and this is like more for developer backend. It's the real-time notifications that you can hook into as a developer. So you have your BUX server. Your BUX server starts giving you notifications when there's a payment comes in, when a payment fails, when the things happen, and then you can hook into that. You can do something. So if you create a mobile wallet, you can hook into that, and you can have mobile notifications. So BUX doesn't do the actual emails or the mobile notifications, but it will allow you to hook into it to actually do that. It has a full block header sync, so it has all the block headers by default in its database. So it can verify transactions by itself using SPV. Another interesting feature that we've also added, and this is not used a lot yet, but it might be interesting in the future, is the read-only access keys. So you can actually create a key, which is a private key, and then you can give that out to somebody. And with that key, they can access data in the BUX database. But they're not able to do anything. They're not able to create transactions or anything like that, because it's a different type of private key. So they don't have actually the private key to do that. But this allows somebody read-only access to your whole history. So you could potentially give this to your accountant or your tax consultant or something like that to actually follow along what's going on. Or to another application that's reading in your transactions. So if you're doing something, you're building an application and you're maybe creating run transactions, or you're creating some data transactions, you could have a secondary application read from the BUX server to actually get those transactions. We have built a lot of things around BUX. So we also have a monitor to monitor the BUX server from something that we call the console. I'll show you a little bit about that a little later. And we have also have cluster support built in. This is actually very new because for instance, at Tonic Power, we run with multiple servers running in a cluster. So the whole API backend is running on multiple servers. And you have to do some stuff to make sure that everything goes okay with concurrency and things like that. I won't get too technical about that, but that's actually built in now as well. So BUX should have no problem in operating in a situation like that. And one of the things that we try to do is make it very, very easy to create transactions, but also very customizable. So there's a customizable transaction builder that allows you to set the inputs, the outputs, the fees, what broadcasters you want to use. If you want to have some scripts, inputs or output scripts, anything goes. You can do whatever you want. And there's like various layers of complexity that you can do there, but it's all built in. So this is how it's actually quite easy for us to build something like a token, like STAS token support into BUX. So BUX is not just one thing, but we actually have the whole BUX suite. So there is something called the BUX server, which is like a complete standalone server, which started out as the like an example implementation of using BUX, but it's something that that can be used now. And everything's open source. So you can go to the GitHub, download the BUX server, put some configuration that's in there, and just run. And you got your own little BUX server running in PayMail if you do the DNS stuff. But the BUX server is actually just a thin layer around the BUX engine. So that second point, the engine, is actually what BUX really is. that is where the Bitcoin utility export management thing lives. Then we have the console, which is a small application, front-end application in React to manage your BUX server, or you can actually use it as a very rudimentary, not very user-friendly wallet as a user, because you can also use it as a user of BUX. You can also log into the console. We have 2 clients built. So for the developers out there, we have a TypeScript client and a Go client, which allow you to interact with BUX. And we have something called the BUX agent, which is actually something that sits next to a Bitcoin node and listens to what's happening on the network and sends everything that the BUX server might be interested in to the BUX server. So this is how we actually can support legacy addresses. And this is something definitely that we're still developing. We were actually fixing just an hour ago. We're fixing the last bugs to make it work, and it's working quite nicely now. I have a demo application that actually uses this, and the application gets the transaction, processes the transaction, sends out a notification before even the Handcash UI has updated that the transaction's been sent. So it's quite fast, works really nicely. There's also a kube controller, which allows you to, if you're using Kubernetes, you can, set that up very fast and easy. And there's some 2 things that are actually not open yet. I think they're still private. There's a BUX Blaster, which is just a small application just to pound your BUX server with, or blast your BUX server with transactions to see how it handles. And there's a benchmarking tool I've been using for 8 months now to make sure everything's okay. Well, the transactions are solid, and then the chain that's being created is good, and that's actually performance is very good. So there's a whole suite of things. There's a lot of things that we actually built around this. So the BUX server is, like I said, it's a turnkey solution. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. You download the BUX server, you configure it, you build it, and you're done. You have your little server. Full paymail server capabilities. It's got built-in REST and GraphQL endpoints. You can turn them on or off, but by default, you have both of those. And what we also did is we built in multi-database support. So there's a data abstraction layer in BUX, which allows you to connect different types of databases to BUX. MySQL, Postgres, SQLite, and MongoDB. So this is what I mentioned. If you compile BUX with SQLite, you can probably get into your mobile wallet, and you got your SPV solution for that. Then the BUX engine is actually what's doing most of the stuff around all the core algorithms and stuff like that, but also the database stuff. And so that's a big part in the server. It's just a little layer around that. And this is all written in Go. So if you have a Go app, you can integrate this into your Go app. The BUX console. So this is just something that's a little bit more visual, because a lot of the other stuff is not very visual. It's all backend things and databases, so it's difficult to see. But it's an administration interface. So it allows you to connect to any server. It's all front end, right? So it doesn't actually need a server. You can log in with your xpriv or your access key, which is a little bit scary actually to be able to do that, but you can do that. List your transactions, destinations, UTXOs. You can also create new destinations. So it's kind of like a rudimentary wallet. As an admin, you can register and delete payments on your server, and you can create and revoke access keys. And this is a screenshot of the console. It shows a little bit of what it does. It shows you those stats about your BUX server. This is very rudimentary, and if somebody has some great UI skills, they're welcome to help with this. An open source project. It's all open on GitHub, so join us. The BUX clients, just to give you an idea of how simple it is to use. Like I said, we have clients in TypeScript and Go, and the only thing that you need is an xpriv. So that's an extended private key. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. You shouldn't be building a wallet, but the people that do can. And there are many ways of managing your xpriv. You can do it with mnemonics like we did before. So a lot of the stuff actually that we built for this is kind of supporting the way that we used to do things in Bitcoin, right? with mnemonics and legacy addresses and stuff like that. So I think a lot of people will not be very happy about hearing that, and that's okay because we needed a lot of this stuff, but it will support all the new stuff. But just to give you an idea of how easy it is. So if you look at this, most of the code that you're seeing here is just setup, and the last 5 lines is actually making a transaction. This is all you need to make a transaction in your wallet with the BUX server. So you do BUX client send to recipients, give them recipients, and you go. It's very, very, very easy. And the same in Go, right? Go code is a little bit less readable if you're not used to it, but it's the same thing. It's very easy to do a transaction. What's happening under the hood is complex, but we're trying to simplify that a lot. There's some ping back and forth from the front-end wallet to the server and back, but that's so that's the complexities that those libraries actually take care of for you. So the agent that I mentioned earlier is to solve a problem, because not all transactions are peer-to-peer, and they're not going to be able to do everything via SPV. And the goal of the agent is to be reliably able to pick the transaction up eventually. So we are listening to the mempool with the agent. So the agent lives next to a node, preferably in the same data center, very, very close to the node. It is listening to the mempool. So any transaction that was sent will hopefully get picked up, but it's also crawling the blocks. So it will know what block it has already processed, and it will process the blocks after that. That's actually a very efficient process that doesn't use a lot of memory. It uses some CPU, but it makes sure that you get all the transactions that you're actually interested in. You might not get them immediately, but at least you get them. But if you get them immediately, even through the mempool, and we know about this transaction in BUX, then we're off to the races, and it will do all the synchronization in the bottom part directly to the node. So directly start talking to the network directly. So if we just have any inkling of a transaction that's related to any XPub or any account that's in BUX, then we will be able to sync up the state and how many confirmations there are and all that kind of stuff. So who are the users of BUX? So this is a small list. So of course, Tonic Pow, but the guys from Brightview are also using it. Smart Ledger is using it. We'll come with a product announcement somewhere in the next couple of months. Jamify is also using it. And I just want to show you a little bit of how they're using it, and just to give you an idea that these things are actually real and they're being used. So Tonic Pow is actually not using the BUX server. They're only using the BUX engine. So actually there's the core part, and it's built into the Tonic Pow API. GraphQL is turned off. The rest is actually going through the Tonic Pow API and not the BUX server, but it's the REST interface, and the paymail is being handled there as well. And they're using MySQL as a data store. The guys from Brightview did it a little bit differently. They're also not using GraphQL, and they're using Postgre as their database. And what they did is they took the BUX server and actually built something around it. So they extended the server. And I just want to ask the guys for a little bit of a quote. So Dylan Murray, he gave me a little bit of quote. Brightview BUX powers our paid surveys product where users can get paid for their survey responses. BUX acts as a state manager for the survey data on-chain, as well as handling P2P payments to respondents. So Dylan is doing something that we didn't design BUX for, but it's awesome. Not to get too technical, but there's stuff in BUX which allows you to very easily create new models. So he created a survey model and probably response models, and all the database stuff will be taken care of by the engine, synchronization, all that kind of stuff. So it's I got good feedback from Dylan that he really liked working with it and was a good solution for their use case. Smart Ledger is using it a little bit differently. They're using almost 100% standard BUX server with the REST and GraphQL APIs both active, Paymail, and they're using MongoDB as a database. So they're a little bit different. And I also got a quote from Greg Ward from Smart Ledger. So he was very nice. Working with the BUX team has been fantastic. It's very nice of him to say. More importantly, BUX is an integral part of our BSV blockchain enterprise wallet. So this gives a little bit of a hint where they're going with that, enabling a secure and seamless connection between our applications, our customers, and transactions between. So enterprise wallet is probably the word that you should be picking out here. It's interesting, coming soon. Gemify, I have to add the soon there. It's not live yet, but they are developing that. And they'll have REST GraphQL. They have used Paymail, and they'll probably use MongoDB as the database. They haven't decided yet, but it's okay. We're actually not using SQLite. Any of us, anything I know in any kind of production way. But we use SQLite internally for all our tests. So there's a huge test suite in BUX as well, and we actually running those tests. We test against all the databases. So there's a database image that's downloaded, and all the tests are running against them. So it should be fairly safe to use any of this data. And we haven't had any problems. So like Tonic Power using MySQL, Brightview using Postgre, others using MongoDB, and everything's fine. So future developments for BUX. See, I'm running out of time. So some of the things that we want to do in BUX is support for direct payment protocol. That's something that's being talked about in the BSV world, the Bitcoin Association, and there's a lot of work happening there also on the light client side. And we also want to support that. Shouldn't be too hard, especially with the help from the Bitcoin Association. Is also something we want to build in. I added the second list to more database support to add Cassandra, because it's something I'm very interested in. We don't really have concrete plans to do that, but I would be really interested in actually adding that support for Cassandra into BUX. So I might actually do that as a hobby project on the side. In the BUX ecosystem, so this is something that I wanted to mention. Though I know of a couple of people that are working on BUX service providers. So you don't have to download the code, configure it yourself, or run it, or set up servers or anything like that. You can actually just buy that service. So you could rent a dedicated BUX server instance. There's somebody working on that. I can't say who or promise anything because I don't know if they're actually going to finish that product, but there's somebody actually working on this. And there's also somebody working on shared service for BUX accounts. So you would just sign up to a site and you'll be allowed to create 50,000 accounts or something like that for your application. And there's also somebody building a BUX mobile wallet, which will allow you to connect to any BUX server. So it'll be something very different from the mobile wallets that are there now, because then you could run your own BUX server, connect your mobile to that, or you can connect it to somebody else's BUX server, maybe get some interesting new things into the ecosystem. And we would love to hear from you as well. What would you like to see in something like this? So what are some of the things that you're missing in the ecosystem or you'd like to see in a solution like this? Almost finally, I just wanted to give a shout out to the people that actually develop BUX. So I'm just part of the team. So it's Austin, myself, Dylan, and Luke been doing the work. So three of us from Tonic Power and Dylan is from Brightview. So these are people that have been working very diligently on BUX for the last 9 months. Well, thank you for your attention, Ed. And are there any questions? And you can find more information about BUX at getbux.io. It's a website. If anybody feels compelled to help with that, you're very welcome. We are very much coders and not copywriters. So any help will be appreciated. And all this stuff is available on GitHub under github.com/buxorg, where all the open source code is actually just sitting there, waiting for you to do something with it. Yeah, that's a question that I would like to answer, but I'm not a lawyer. I think that's the first thing that we need to say. I can't really give you any advice on that. But the way that BUX is built is, I think, so like, again, I'm not a lawyer, but you don't have any keys. BUX doesn't have any keys, so it's not custodial. So whatever you do with BUX is just like as a cache, right? There's a lot of features in there. There's a lot of stuff that it actually does for you, but it's just like a cache on the blockchain. You're still interacting with the blockchain, not BUX. because any digital signatures that you need to do on the transactions to actually make them valid, you are doing on your side. You're not doing it on BUX side. So somebody might create a wallet with BUX. It's very, very easy because you got the clients, and now they might be the way, if they do it in a certain way, they might be wanting to talk to a lawyer about compliancy because they are doing something with the keys, but BUX is not. So the way that we try to set this up is that BUX is kind of ignorant about the digital signatures and the private keys and can't actually do anything on your behalf. You have to do it. Yeah, I think no. My first answer, second answer, well, it's probably very easy to build that around BUX. BUX basically takes care of your UTXO. So it's like UTXO management. So any transactions that you create, you might have some change. Anything you get in, you would have some new UTXOs. We'll take care of all the stuff. You don't have to worry about it. The only thing you need to worry about is creating transactions. So it doesn't do this, but it could be part of a solution like that, and it could be a big part of a solution like that. So you're creating your IFTT on Bitcoin probably very much easier using BUX. Yeah, same boat. We want more documentation as well. It's so the documentation has not had the highest priority yet. And we would love people to help with that. Like I said, we are coders, and not that we don't want to do this or we're not willing to do this, but oftentimes we kind of miss what people don't understand and what we actually need to be able to use it. Because we often start very high because we assume that you know so much. So that might be a problem. So any help anybody wants to give, please shout out. So in that, if you're worried about that, I would set up my own BUX server if I was you. And there will be, and there's the console, which you can interact with it without anybody knowing. And there's a mobile wallet coming pretty soon that will allow you to do the same thing. So you'll be completely in control. But not everybody wants that. So there, I think the primary target audience of BUX, and I see CoinEasy is actually on the call as well, so maybe I can call out that, is to be something like a Twetch wallet. So you have a great application and you want to offer your users a wallet in your application, then BUX is something that you can plug in, and you could use BUX as the backend service for your wallet. And now you just saved yourself a ton of development to actually develop that. The only thing that you now need to do is do the key management in your front end, and that's it. But but the thing is, it's also very easy to run it yourself, and you can run it on SQLite on your laptop, no problem. So if you're worried about so CoinEasy is actually mentioning here, he says he's describing Metasync's Twetch UTXO management system. Yeah, that's true. There's probably more people working on the same problem. We definitely have MAPI. We're actually in the back end. We've implemented everything that we could to talk to service providers. So we have the agent that talks directly to nodes. We have MAPI interface that talks to MAPI for providers. We have watch on chain support. We have all there's like two parts to creating a transaction in BUX. There's one is that you will talk to the BUX server, you create the transaction, you go into the BUX database. The second step is putting that on chain. And we try to do that in any way possible, which is also configurable. So when you create a transaction, you configure how you want to do that. You can also configure it on your server. But by default, I think there's we talk to a couple of miners and what's on chain just to try to dump that transaction into the mempool. And there's a danger to any of this. So in the last 9 months when we were building this, there's a danger that you create a transaction that's actually not valid, the network doesn't like, because you haven't actually put it on chain yet. You create another transaction, you create this chain of transactions in your local database, and that can happen. And we are doing our absolute best to prevent that and have squashed many bugs to actually prevent that happening. And so far, for the last couple of months, have been in using it in production. It's been very, very good. It's getting the right fees. It's using the right inputs, creating the right outputs, and the miners are accepting all of them. So it's all good. No, we're the best. No, yeah, and I think that's great. And I think so in some applications that I have also been working on, there's this need, of course, to put transactions on chain, and I think the solution is not always the same. I've actually talked to clients that wanted to use BUX for something and said, no, you shouldn't. You should use gate to chain, or use Mint Blue, or use something like that, because those guys are more specialized in this. But when you have your own key management, that doesn't really work anymore, because those guys, they allow you, they give you API points to put some data on chain, but they have all the funds and the addresses and the key management and making sure that these things get funded on chain. BUX does all that for you. So if you want to put 1 million transactions per day on chain, each like data stuff and stuff like that, something like crypto fights will be doing, BUX is probably not what you're looking for. If you want a wallet for your application, something like a Twitch wallet or something like that, BUX might be a very, very good solution for you. How does that? So there's Metasync, apparently, that what Twitch does is fantastic. So that's probably a direct competitor. How does that relate to a light client and stuff that they're doing? It's actually very similar. But there were enough. So we talked to those guys, to Jad and Mark, and some of those guys that are actually working on PayD and on the light client stuff. And it's good stuff, because we borrowed a lot of stuff from them, learned from them. But our use case was a little bit different. So I think the old IT answer is most applicable. It depends. Kind of depends on what you're building. So if you have an IoT device that's sending data and you need to put that on chain, I don't think BUX is a solution for you. If you want a built-in wallet, BUX might be a solution for you. So it depends. I think we will see in the coming years how this pans out. One of the most important things, I think one of the most important reasons is the way that BUX handles XPubs is the reason that we actually built it and are using it in the way we are in Tonic POW. So it depends, but it's a fairly tight, simple suite of tools, all written in the same language. So it's all in Go, at least the backend service. And some tools like the light client, I don't think it is. I think it's a bunch of services wrapped together into a package, but it's not as tightly integrated as BUX is. But I definitely think that's one of the competitors in that sense. But it's open source, so anybody can use what they want. Well, there are people coming out with services in BUX server. There is no BUX company, there is no BUX, or there's a BUX org, but there's no real BUX organization. It's stuff that was developed by Tonic POW as a backend to the Tonic POW transaction processing. We're using it as well, and other people are starting to use it. But there's no real business model in that sense. This is a open source project, and that's something that I think is absolutely fantastic that Tonic POW does that, because this is led by Tonic POW to build something that they've been waiting for. It's almost like they've been waiting for this for 2 years, but nobody did it. So it's like, oh, now we just have to do it ourselves. But they truly believe in open source and in the community. So everything that we're doing is open sourced and is available. And if you want to create a business around this tomorrow, go ahead. More power to you. So there's no direct business for the people that actually created BUX in that sense. There's no business model yet, but there's more things happening in the background in other projects that are related to BUX that might create some new business models later. But I mean, there's third parties creating these BUX services now, and they might have business models for those services. Well, that has to do with the transaction configuration. you can create your custom transaction. BUX will go and get the UTXOs that are needed for that transaction, will complete your transaction, give it back to you. You have to sign it, and then you could potentially not give that transaction back to BUX, but you could give it to a person. So that's something that you would need to build into your wallet, so into your little front end. But that's possible. So what I showed you is that little code that so I don't know, I don't want to go into code, but this that last little line is basically just, that's what's creating a transaction. But what's happening underneath is that it's making a couple of calls, going back and forth. And in that BUX client, you can also do those calls. So you create a transaction configuration. Say, I want to send Eckhart, 100,000 sats. I don't want to use a fee of half a sat per byte because I'm generous and I want to give miners lots of stuff. BUX, it doesn't care. It's like, fine, here you have UTXOs needed for this thing. We'll send you back, and then you can, in the BUX client, so you'll get this complete configuration back. And then you can tell the BUX client to sign it. You'll get it back, and then you can do whatever you want with it. The only thing that you would need to take care of is that those UTXOs will be reserved during that handshake back and forth. And you have to make sure that if you're giving it to somebody, those UTXOs actually don't get used for something else. So it's not difficult at all. You just have to be conscious of that, and you can set up a system like that. But it will not BUX wouldn't do that. Your wallet would do that.